Hello again, friends, and welcome to another segment here on Doc G's Wine and Spirits Review. As you can see here on the table, I have quite a lineup here ready for you. But before I even tell you what we're going to do tonight in terms of the title quote of this segment, I want you to see that I have aligned here, and I'm going to demonstrate for you what I want to talk to you about after I get a chance to talk about it. Because I think being able to demonstrate what I'm going to explain to you is actually a better way of sharing it with you than just talking about it. So we're going to have a little bit of combo here of demonstration and then a little bit of the background and the education, because as you know, as a former teacher, I can never, ever give up an opportunity to try to teach something to someone. So what is the secret tonight? Tonight, in one word, we're going to be dealing with a topic called terroir. And terroir has many definitions. It's often thought of as something that's a little bit cerebral, a little bit French, but it will kind of help you understand what I'm about to demonstrate here when you look at the whole concept, because it really is. It's one word, but it's a concept that has to do with the understanding of why certain wines taste the way they do, and why they can be compared and actually compared to being the same and also being different. And what I mean by that is, if you look at the 6 wines here, there are 6 bottles of wine here. There are 2 Sauvignon Blancs, there are 2 Cabernet Francs, and there are 2 Malbecs. Now, if I were to take the average wine drinker, which I consider most people to be, I'm kind of an outlier, I'm kind of a little geek out there, a little nerdy wine guy. But if you were to take the average wine drinker and have them sample these 6 wines, and first these, then these 2, and then these 2, and ask to distinguish the difference, they wouldn't be able to tell you probably, unless they've read up on this and researched it like I have, about the concept of terroir. But they would be able to tell you that A and B taste different. A and B taste different here, and A and B taste different here. And that is all due to the concept. That's not even a concept, to the facts of terroir. So let me start by first saying, welcome to our explanation of terroir. I'll try to keep this as simple as possible without insulting you, and at the same time not also overwhelming you. It's always my goal to try to hit some sweet spot that we can share some information that will help you ultimately make a better wine selection. So cheers and welcome. So that is one of these wines, I'll tell you in a minute. Terroir is a French word that can be defined basically as a sense of place, the environment. It literally means, if you're going to translate it, it comes from the Latin terra, land, soil, etc. But in the wine world, terroir, and it's not just used in France, believe me, as I was doing my research for this segment, there's the word terroir on the backs of bottles. And you look at it and you go, it looks like the word terrier. Well, we're not talking about dogs. It's the word terroir. And terroir refers to everything that I'm talking about. It refers to the environment in which the wine grows. So what does that mean? Well, when you think about wine growing, you think about elevation, you think about the slope of the land, you think about the soil, you think about the subsoil, you think about drainage, you think about sun exposure, you think about the climate. It can be as much as the latitude, how the water drains in the area. It's basically what every farmer ever thinks about. Because remember, at its elemental level, winemaking is farming first. You have to grow the grapes. And if you grow an inferior product, you're going to wind up with an inferior product in the bottle. And if you don't pay attention to terroir, you're not going to come up with the most effective wine that you can make based on the climate, geographic, and land, etc. conditions that are given to you. So let's discuss it even a little bit further. Let me get out of grapes for a minute and talk about tomatoes. Do you grow tomatoes in your backyard? Do you ever compare them to the ones that you buy in the market in the middle of the winter? Undoubtedly, your tomatoes have some kind of terroir. They were grown in your backyard under the conditions of your little piece of property. If you take it a little further, a Jersey tomato, very famous for tomatoes, versus a Florida tomato. They taste different. That, my friends, is terroir in a nutshell. Now, you have to back that conversation up. So there are many scientists who study all of these concepts, and they say terroir is just kind of like a concept. It's not really something that you can prove. Well, I'm going to prove it to you when we take a sip of each of these wines. And if you are so inclined at some point, try it yourself. And I'll give you some tips on how you might want to do that yourself. But my purpose here is to help you make decisions and pick out wine styles that might better suit your palate, might better suit your food pairing. If you just like to sip wines, maybe you like a certain style. Okay, it's like the Coke and Pepsi thing. Not that those are terroir, but they're colas, but there's a subtle difference. So the concept of terroir, if we break it down, probably the most important part of it. Well, let me back up a little bit. If you look at terroir, it can be broken down a number of ways. One of the ways is if you look at grapes that are grown in cool climates, and I would say the Finger Lakes, which you've heard me talk a lot about, versus the warmer climates that you find in California, where there's more sunlight, where there's a longer growing season, there's different kinds of soil. All of those things impact the flavors that eventually get into the grape. If you think of the analogy of like a tea bag and how the earth kind of works as the filter for the flavors that ultimately wind up in the grape, that's another good way of looking at the analogy of terroir. So the land and the climate have a lot to do with it. The amount of rain, the amount of sunshine, I've already said that. The drainage, the availability of water, whether you have to irrigate, whether you have to dry farm it. All of those things impact the flavor and the profile of the wine that you're going to drink. And without it being too obvious, a Sauvignon Blanc, which this one, I'll just turn to this one. This one was grown in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. This one was grown in New Zealand. Okay? So you get the idea. They're both Sauvignon Blanc, but they're going to taste different. If I gave those to you in a blind taste test, you'd go, they're not the same grape. But I can assure you that they are. Those are facts. So terroir can be expansive, like, for example, a Lancaster County Sauvignon Blanc versus a Sauvignon Blanc from New Zealand. And these are just limited examples. There's Sauvignon Blanc grown in France. I'm only showing you the ones that I have. But they're all going to taste a little bit differently in the end, especially as you train your palate more. Maybe in the beginning you go, whatever, I don't get it. I'm just trying to impart to you that there is some very significant difference depending on where the grape is grown and the climate conditions surrounding it. So that's what terroir does. So in a cooler climate, for example, I'm going to ramble a little bit here. The amount of sunshine that a grape gets helps drive up the amount of sugar that is in the grape. Well, if you've listened to me in other explanations, the sugar content in the grape determines the level of alcohol that it can finally achieve and how much body the grape might have actually or eventually achieve once it's fermented and put into the barrel and let mature to its bottling. So all of these things back up to the concept of terroir. There are tons of studies. People buy wineries who are going to go out and they look for a place to maybe establish a wine, and they do soil samples. They actually come in, they want to know whether it's sandstone, whether it's shale, whether it's clay, whether it's some kind of alluvial soil. I was doing research for this. There were literally tens of different types of soils and rocks like granite and other rocks that can influence the quote minerality in wine. All of those things are important to the concept of terroir. It's no accident that if you look on the map, they're not growing a lot of grapes in New Orleans. Grape growing is concentrated. If I could show you a map of the world, and if I can find something, I'll post it, and I'll also post a little bit of reading background on terroir, because this can go on forever. But it's no mistake that grapes aren't grown in certain places. They need certain conditions. They need a certain amount of sunlight. They need a certain type of soil. They need a certain amount of water. They need a certain way to slope. Sometimes elevation impacts what the grapes can do. On the California coast, that fog rolling in at night helps influence the way Pinot Noir can cool down at night, and it affects the profile and the eventual taste of the glass, of what goes into the glass. That, again, my friends, is terroir. So trying to reduce this to one word is almost impossible. And if I were to go out and keep explaining this, we could be here an hour or two. We're doing neither one of those. But I just want to give the overall sense to you of what terroir means to the production of wine. It can impact everything about a wine, depending on where the grape is grown. The fact of the matter is there are certain places where you want to grow these Vitis vinifera grapes that we talk about all the time, and there are certain places where it's just better to grow tomatoes and corn. Let's be honest. So I live in a state where wine growing is okay. I don't want to be negative about any of the wineries that I shop here at Pennsylvania, but we're not making world-class wines here in PA. We're making good ones. We have a decent terroir, we have a decent climate, and Pennsylvania wines are getting better. But we're never gonna be California. We're never gonna be Burgundy. We're never gonna be the Loire Valley. We're never going to be Piemonte in Italy. We're never going to be Rias Baixas in northern Spain. We're just not gonna do it. We're never gonna be Portugal. We are limited by the environment in which we grow our grapes and put the vines in the soil. The soil is probably a good word that is synonymous with terroir. So I've said enough about that. I'm going to post for you the whole concept of terroir, and if you're so inclined scientifically, you have a little scientific background in you and you want to really get into it, you can read about it. But trust me, terroir influences. I don't care what the scientists say. When you put it in your mouth, you'll know what I'm talking about. And you'd have to do a test on your own to be able to prove it. And not a test, but maybe sometime when you're out at a restaurant, order a New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc. And then the next time, order one, if you can find it, from California. You'll know they're different. You will just know it because they are. So let's go to our demonstration. So I'm going to start out with the terroir experience here for you by starting out with the whites. I have, excuse me, I have for you a winery that is in Lancaster County called Walt's Vineyards. They make excellent wines. They've been around for a little over a decade now. And on the back of this wine, I'm going to read for you. I'm going to read you one sentence. The Waltz family has been blessed with a terroir. It's on this label. Comprised of world-class vineyard soils. Now, I personally don't know what that means. I didn't do the soil samples there. But I can tell you what, if they didn't have the soils that they needed, you might as well not grow Sauvignon Blanc. Because I'm just going to give you an example. That I've been going to the Finger Lakes for 3 decades now. There's probably, I don't even ever, there's one person up there that I know, 2, that grows Sauvignon Blanc. What does that tell you? That's terroir, because the climate up there is not conducive to producing good Sauvignon Blanc. So if you want to grow a Sauvignon Blanc in a place that's not conducive to it, you better be a really good winemaker and be able to manage the crop before you put it in the bottle. So the second Sauvignon Blanc is from New Zealand. New Zealand, different soil type, and again, I didn't research, so it's irrelevant because that'll just bog you down with useless facts. But the soil type in New Zealand is different than the soil type in Lancaster County. Trust me, it's a different part of the world. So here is the Lancaster County Sauvignon Blanc. Very light on the nose, not very aromatic. Very light body. It's good. It's refreshing. A little bit acidic, a little bit of citrus on the finish. Now, Sauvignon Blanc from New Zealand. Much more aromatic. New Zealand Sauvignon Blancs are known for having a big lychee fruit component. I mean, you say, what the hell's a lychee fruit? Well, let me tell you. I was like, I don't know either. So you know what I did? I went to the supermarket and I bought a can of lychees. And I bit into it and I went, oh my God, that's why they've always said this is lychee. So if you want to train yourself how to do that, that's the kind of thing you need to do. This wine has lychee on the nose. A little bit more grassy than that one, which is a very important characteristic of Sauvignon Blancs. So there you have it. If I put these 2 wines in front of you, you'd go, that's a different wine. But they're not. They're both Sauvignon Blanc. They taste different. Why? The T word, terroir. So with that said, let's go to our next example. I have here for you a Sauvignon Blanc, gave that up. We have here a 2016 Hosmer. Hosmer Winery is in the Finger Lakes on Cayuga Lake, between Cayuga and Seneca Lake in the Finger Lakes. Fantastic winery. I love their stuff. And this is a Cabernet Franc from Mendoza, Argentina. And it is made by Fabre Montmaillou. And this one is one that I've had in my cellar for years now. But I wish I could, I don't know if you're going to be able to see it here, but you can just see the color difference. This one is opaque. This one is solid purple. So I'm going to start off with the Hosmer. And characteristic of, because it's a shorter growing season in the Finger Lakes than the growing season here in Mendoza, Argentina. And what does that do? Well, you don't get as much sugar in the grape. So they come out tasting a little greener. They have a little more vegetal flavor. Here, you get the sugar in it and it smooths out the wine. So let's taste this one. I can taste the cherry, the green pepper. It tastes like a young wine, but it's a 2016. This will age to perfection. It's actually very good. And on the bottle, in the vineyard, this was grown, here's to the terroir comment, in silt loam with glacial till on an easterly slope, 3 to 6 degrees. The vines were planted in 1990. That's how seriously these guys take this stuff. I mean, that's a lot of detail, and it affects the flavor in the wine. So let's compare it now to the Cabernet Franc from Argentina. And this is very good. They're both good. This one has a darker red fruit. If you didn't know better, you might think you're drinking something from some other region, but it does not taste at all like this Cab Franc. They are almost completely different wines, but trust me, they are both Cabernet Franc. And finally, let's go to our Malbec. Now Malbec is another grape. Two of them actually I'm going to use here from Argentina. This Alamos Malbec, for you guys that, you like to shop in PA wine and spirits, Alamos is available everywhere. Big wine company. So this one's grown in the foothills of the Andes. So this is an elevated wine. Very fruity. That's really good. Get yourself a nice grilled steak with that one. It's got dark fruit on it. A little bit of the tannins have smoothed out. And the last one, last but not least, this is a French Malbec. And Malbec comes from France. It made its way to Argentina. It's from the Cahors region. This one, however, is actually grown in southwest France, which is not where Cahors is. But this one is, I'm going to read the bottle again. Blank, 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 and his unique terroir in the southwest of France. They take this stuff seriously. I'm telling you, in Burgundy, you can go 100 yards down the road and they have a different terroir because of the strangeness of the geography and the way Mother Nature rolled through there and caused different soil formations to happen in such a compact area. So enough talking, let's try some more wine before we say goodbye here. This one actually has a little aroma as opposed to the Alamos. Very smooth. It's a little bit more refined. It's not as fruity. Probably begs to have a little bit food with it. You could probably sip this one alone. So my friends, before I conclude, I just want to say that I could have had Pinot Noir here because terroir affects them. Pinot Noir West Coast versus a Pinot Noir from the Finger Lakes versus one from Burgundy, all different animals. I could have done Cabernet Sauvignon. They grow Cabernet Sauvignon here in Pennsylvania. They grow it in France, in Bordeaux, and other places. They grow it in, obviously in California. We could have done Viognier. We could have done Riesling. We could have done Albarino, because all of these are grown both in what is called the Old World, which refers more to Europe, and the New World, which refers to everything else. So any grape, single varietal, and I would take blends out of this mix, because once you throw blends into the mix, you are getting into an area where the winemaker is really starting to exert the influence of their hand, and decisions are being made that have nothing to do with what came out of the ground. Those are other kinds of decisions. So at the end of the day, just know that when you are going to pick up a wine that is not a blend, if you remember my last presentation was blends, this is just the opposite. If you're going to pick up a wine that is a single varietal wine, and know that most of the single varietal wines are grown all over the planet in the wine regions that we talked about. Again, we're not going to be finding world-class Cabernet Sauvignon from Missouri. It's just not going to happen. No offense to anybody in Missouri that's growing grapes, but you're not growing world-class Cabernet Sauvignon. So, when you're out shopping for your wine, think about the area that you want to get your wine from, and know that if you got a bottle from somewhere else, it may taste a little bit different. I hope what I have to post for you will help clarify that a little bit more. I know I ran a little bit long here, but this is an important topic for you to digest, and one that should help you in your future wine selections. So thanks for joining me, and we'll see you again next time. Cheers.